The question was, did this correspond to a reality? And so Brona Chadabuzic, who'd previously worked with us developing our assessment kits for primary and post-primary ESL, embarked on her PhD research. She recorded and of course observed and made field notes of 154 English language lessons, about 80 hours, in 3 primary schools over the course of a school year, and she also collected up some samples of pupils' written work. She has 2,000 pages of transcription. She then focused on 18 pupils in particular. We decided that we would exclude from her analysis any pupils that were doubtful to us in terms of their linguistic origin. In one of the schools, they had quite a lot of Nigerian pupils, and it was impossible to determine to what extent Nigerian English was part of what they brought to school with them. And there were also a number of kids who weren't long enough involved to be able to contribute to a longitudinal study. So her analysis focused on 18 pupils who were aged between 4 and 10 years old from 10 different national backgrounds, mostly East European and Asian. Between them, they spoke at least 10 different languages from a range of language families, and some were in their first and some were in their second year of learning. So what we were wanting to find out was whether individual pupils, but also the group of pupils looked at as a whole in first and second year, were passing through a trajectory of acquisition of English that corresponded more or less with what was predicted in these English language proficiency benchmarks derived from the framework. Brona isolated 7,455 speaking terms. She coded each term according to benchmark level and topic. Interactional criteria she derived from conversational analysis, and the kind of linguistic features commonly focused on in SLA research. Well, what she found was that each pupil progressed strictly according to the benchmarks levels, in the sense that none of them produced an utterance appropriate to level A2 without first producing utterances at level A1. None produced an utterance at B1 without first producing utterances at A2. In other words, there was absolutely no evidence, and we didn't expect there would be, that you could bypass level A1 or you could go from A1 straight into B1. Though I might tell you, certain colleagues with whom I work in Strasbourg thought this might be the case. By the end of the first year of English language support, most of the pupils were on their way to A2, and B1 proficiency was achieved, at least by the ones we looked at, towards the end of the second year. So that was what it looked like. On the left-hand side, you've got the year 1 pupils, on the right-hand side, the year 2, and the dark on the left, the dark bits of the columns are predominantly A1 utterance and then moving into A2, and then the sort of medium shading on the top of some of them, on the top of, yes, most of them in the second year are into B1. What we were particularly interested in, though, was the steady growth in linguistic competence measured by mastery of nouns, verbs, pronouns, etc., etc. I don't know whether I can read that from here. I can read it on the screen. So the arrow, this is looking at 3 of these things: noun use, verb use, and pronoun use. And what she's done is to work out proportions of utterance related to the different levels. So the first column after the grammatical indicator column has to do with A1 linked use, and then A2 linked use beginning to emerge, and then A2 linked use increasing, and then B1 linked L2 use increasing. So when in the first column you have a limited range of nouns, infrequent pluralization, typical errors have to do with lexis and non-pluralization. Then in the second column, increasing noun production, some pluralization, isolated attempts at possessive marking. Typical errors have to do with lexis, pluralization, non-marking of possession. And then when they're getting more fully into A2, you get increasingly more accurate noun use, greater accuracy in pluralization, occasional marking of possession. Typical errors are lexis, overgeneralization of irregular plurals, and non-marking of possession. And then in the fourth column, a wide range of generally accurate noun use, and so on and so forth. And all of this is supported by an enormous body of data. And then we've got them for verb lexemes and additional lexicogrammatical indicators. So what it says in the arrow there is increasing lexical range based on quantitative analysis of word list entries, broadening and deepening of semantic range, themes, specificity of vocabulary, diversification in verb lexemes produce widening range of lexicogrammatical features, with lexical development apparent within these emerging categories. Now, one of the things that critics of the CFR in Europe have been glad to complain about is that they say it doesn't take any account of the findings of SLA research. Well, of course, in a sense it can't, because it's a language-independent specification of levels. But our particular adaptation of the levels and the way we implemented that, and then with this particular research project, seems to show that it's actually a pretty accurate plotting of the kind of progression that classic SLA literature would in any case predict. These findings can be used, and we plan to do this, to provide a detailed commentary on the SLA trajectory that underlies the three proficiency levels in the benchmarks. We would be in a position to give teachers a lot more information about what these descriptors mean in terms of different features of grammar, for example, different kinds of involvement in interactive discourse, and so on. We can also use the data to inform the development of assessment instruments, both test tasks and rating grids. We would hope to be able to stimulate discussion of the SLA implications of CFR's proficiency levels, and to encourage similar studies elsewhere